today, as part of our British social history in the 1970s, I'd like to address they were more than a necessary part of life, but they knitted our local communities with social contact and communication. So I'll begin with that and find out how much we miss this. Before the supermarket strangled the high street and condemned our local parade by boarded up shops and vegetation grown through the cracks of concrete, in the 1970s in Britain we had more local amenities. We had a meeting place to pass the time of day with locals, neighbours, didn't we? Many people didn't need a car or didn't even have one. We could walk to the shops and get our needs, along with a friendly chat, and not be shocked at the prices. Maybe a penny more than the supermarket at that time, but there were much less of those around. The enemy was soon to set up its arms. I use that big statement to get you interested. But seriously, many councils in the late 1960s would build amenities into the fabric of our social interaction. They built shops, local libraries, pubs, healthcare places. Your town held all of your needs, including parks and playing facilities for kids, with telephone boxes located on the corner of many streets for more accessibility. These places were respected and were used by most of us and very seldom vandalised. I want to concentrate on those shop parades, normally built underneath maisonettes, maybe 6 or 7 shops in a row, all selling different things. They were a lifeline to our close-knit communities. So let's start with the newsagent. The newsagent will be selling sweets, cheap toys, cigarettes, papers, magazines, and never overshadowing other proprietors by selling what they sold in order to undercut. It was a respect for their neighbour and its business. Marathons, bar six, opal fruits, spangles, Tudor crisps where you could see how many crisps you got in the packet through that clear window. You could bring your empty pop bottles back and get 3p. That was a few halfpenny sweets in return too. Most customers were on first names terms with their sales staff. They packed so much in those shops. They even had a paper round service. You can now find the whole of this type of business in the corner of a supermarket today. As the 1970s came to an end, we saw the decline as supermarkets took over the whole industry. Now Sundays are grabbing the only undamaged business these shops could get. Longer supermarket hours have been promised. Do you agree? The convenience shop. We called these by their owners' names back in the 70s, Pauline's or Roberts's or whatever. We had to know the names of these shops as kids because our parents always used to send us down there. We had a few counter-service shops in the 70s, but by then we had moved over to a more self-service. That did cut down the queues, but the social contact was starting to decline. But there was still enough left to give us that personal service. And with an influx of Asian-run shops, our choice was getting more exotic. We were trying to cook more fragrant international food. The staff, normally by one family running the whole show, would always assist you in getting the right ingredients and cooking tips. Our community was expanding with integration, and our community was getting more diverse, as refusals may cause offence. But some of them gave it to you, didn't they? Not much, just enough to get you by, and maybe a couple of eggs or a loaf of bread until payday. You see, my parents were brave. They'd send me down the shop with a begging note, and they'd always say yes, and thank God. I must admit I would have froze on the spot if they said no, but I was a curly-headed little 5-year-old kid. They're not going to say no to me, were they? I'm bald now, by the way. But that lift gave us so much, knowing that we could get through the week thanks to that local grocer. Oh, I can't see Tesco's doing that today, even with a loyalty card. I can remember buying 2 single eggs or an OXO cube where they'd split the box to sell you singles, even to the extreme of selling single cigarettes with 1 match. I'm not going to tell you how old I was. The unisex hairdresser. Many local rows of shops had one of these, full of women and a few men. Mothers would take their kids to get their hair cut. You'd listen to the gossip and pretend not to understand, especially when they began talking about their husbands and their inadequacies. Blushing was not an option. You didn't want them to know that you understood that conversation. Cups of teas, biscuits and an ashtray was provided. You saw names like Betty's Salon or Sally's Scissors. Great inventive names, but you did get that personal service. And that smell of hairspray was overwhelming, not to mention the damage to the ozone layer. The fruit and veg shop always looked great. The colours were neatly laid out, apples and oranges, large bags of £56 of unwashed potatoes. For younger people, that's a great big bag of potatoes that we had to carry over our shoulders. Everything was sold loose. You could ask for whatever weight amount you wanted to suit your budget. Even though Britain had gone metric, they'd always sold you in pounds and ounces, weighing them on those manual weighing scales with loads of tiny numbers on them. And those tills, ka-ching, as the bell would ring, you know, like the ones that was in Open All Hours with Ronnie Barker. Nothing was pre-packed, all poured into paper bags or boxes. Apart from eggs, or maybe the odd condiment, your greengrocer would stick to his own range and never sell what other shops were selling. We had a laundrette near us. Many would congregate us in the 1970s. Many of us had twin tubs, and they were much harder work than shoving clothes into an automatic washing machine. The laundrette had all its automatic washers and spinners and drying, and the staff would be there to help you out with all these modern machines. To own an automatic washing machine back then was very expensive. I remember those steamy windows, clicking, grinding noises of the washers and spinners, and chatting. People passing the day with just reading magazines or catching up with the news, and kids were given sweets just to keep them quiet. That smell of fresh clothes and soap powder gave you a sense of cleanliness. Laundrettes were everywhere in the 70s. They have declined due to automatic washing machines becoming more affordable. Vegetarians, you may want to skip this next chapter. The butcher's shop is next. I nearly forgot about this, I have no idea why. The local butcher. My vivid memory as a child was those stickers on the butcher shop windows. Two of them I remember. One was Join Our Christmas Club and the other New Zealand Lamb. Our butcher was an oracle of information, always at hand with cooking recipes, and would tell you how to cook and get the best out of your meat. Sadly, albeit there are a number of independent butchers still left, many have disappeared over the years, thanks again to the supermarket chains. All pre-packed, stifling plastic and cut meats being sold in packets that are so slimly, sometimes you only get 3 slices in a pack. Our butchers would ask you how thick you wanted it sliced. Sell you bacon with the rind and that little bone. Do you remember that little bone? We had no sell-by dates. You knew it was fresh and you tested its freshness with your nose. You could ask for free bones and scraps for the dogs, and you were offered that little bit extra if it was weighed a little bit over on their manual scales. And cheap cuts were cheap, not priced up and renamed as a delicacy like high-end supermarkets do today. For example, in the black country where I live, it was belly dreft. Now it's pork belly, just to put a bit of price on it, and they're more expensive than pork chops. The Christmas Club was just a way of trusting your butcher with a weekly amount of money that was paid to them that they'd save for you until Christmas. And then you'd end up with a great hamper. I mean a big hamper of pork pies, turkeys, hams, sausages, bacon, eggs, you name it, it was there. And one more thing about the butchers, those homemade burgers. They were fabulous. But going back to Christmas, we must remember in the 1970s, most shops were closed for 4 or 5 days. And almost all of your orders were in paper bags or sheets, not wrapped up in plastic. The chippy. You could smell these chips frying for miles. Well, 100 yards at least anyway. There are still many fish and chip shops around today, but it's worth adding that the places were in our row of shops in the 1970s. The reason I'm talking about this is because there was less choice back then. No kebabs or curries, but the choice was extended in the way of fish choices. You could get cod, skate, rock, haddock, and I'm sure a few more. And roe, do you remember that? I hated it. Many sell Alaskan pollock today, or concentrate just on cod. The opening hours were much longer. They were open until midnight, and you could always get a fish supper on the way home from the pub. How many of your local chippies now close much earlier? You get competition from chain burger places, some being open for 24 hours, and then your choices of Chinese, Indian, Italian and pizza places. They've all made an impact on your local chippy. I determine your local chippy by those that actually peel and cut fresh potatoes rather than sell frozen ones or fries. I'm not even going to go on about the price of a chip supper these days. We even had a wool shop in our chain. I wonder how many of you had those. Well, it's a haberdashery, isn't it? Selling knitting patterns and equipment, crochet bits, buttons, sewing materials and cloth. The days of mending were still prominent in the 70s, and people made their own clothes, following patterns and making dresses, trousers, knitting jumpers, scarves and hats. We forget how talented ordinary people were back then, and it wasn't out of necessity just. It was by wanting to wear something that they created themselves that wasn't off the peg. Well, that's another look back of how we lived in the 1970s, and as you have probably gathered, it's my favourite era of British social history, and I hope it has brought back some happy memories for you too. Again, my apologies for typos. Most comments have been very forgiving, and I thank you for that, and for watching. And for the record, I have to answer for some of you. I promise you I am not AI. Honest. If you've got anything else that you'd like me to investigate around the 1970s in Britain, please drop me a comment. I'm always happy to look into it. Once again, thank you so much again for watching. Bye for now.